Welcome back to my channel. I have a new video for you. Something different this time, something new. JDiction, a company who make Resincrete, they reached out to me, they make other things as well, but they reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to review this product. Something I'd looked into before and really wanted to try out. So this is my honest review of JDiction's Resincrete, which is a eco product. It's completely natural, made from natural ingredients. No odours, no BPAs. It's great to use around kids and pets. Let's take a look at it. The instructions are on the back there. Very simple to use, very easy to follow. I'll go through some more details about the ingredients and what's involved, but here I am. I'm just measuring some out. It's a ratio of 10:3. Very simple to follow. So you can go with 100 grams of the powder and add 30 grams of water. Just using some weighing scales here to weigh out 100 grams of the powder. I'm actually going to do 2 batches because I've got a couple of projects I want to try. I use distilled water. It wasn't necessarily recommended to use distilled water, but when it comes to these mixing things, be it acrylic paints, if you've got it available, distilled water apparently will perform better. Less, what's the word I'm looking for? Less impurities, I should think, is probably the right word to use. So I'm just taking a bit out of here of the cup to get it to 100, and there we go, perfect. Now I'll measure out some water, or I'll measure out the second batch of 100 grams, and then I'll measure out some water. Some of this video, some of this process I will speed up, so you're not sitting here watching every single step. And in the meantime, I'll waffle on about the product, let you know about it, what's involved. As you can see on the packet there, it is an eco-based product, as I mentioned. It's a water-based product, so you add some water to the powder and it creates like almost like a plaster of Paris material. There's a limited working time with this. It depends on your environment, but you're looking at anything between 10 to 25 minutes to work with. My room's quite warm. I work in a conservatory which is converted into a studio, and it can get quite warm there. Even this time of year it can get quite warm there, but it's a fairly ambient, comfortable temperature. It's not too warm and it's not too cold. So I'm just measuring up the distilled water here to add to the mixture. I measured out 30 grams of water, so you measure by weight. So there's 100 grams of the powder, 30 grams of water. I'll obviously measure out another 30 grams of water for the other batch of powder I have there when I need it. What you don't want to do is mix it all up in one go when you have a number of projects to do. You want to mix it up as you go along, because there is a limited work time for this. It's not the same as resin where you have maybe 25, 45 minutes. This is a limited work time, so you don't want to be rushing around. It will start to solidify after a period of time, so like I said, it depends on your environment. A colder room, it will last a bit longer, I should think. Here's some Resincrete pigments from JDiction, a number of colours. What you'll notice with the pigments here, you can't use normal resin pigment. This is specifically made for this. You can use mica powder. Apparently you can add glitters, you can add embellishments. You have to be careful of your ratios. Again, you want to have about a 2%, no more than a 2% ratio when it comes to the pigment ink, and the same for mica powder. Apologies for the focus going in and out here. I'm bringing the bottles up to the camera as close as possible, and sometimes it focuses, sometimes it doesn't. So different colours here, we have greens, blues, oranges, all sorts of colours. They come in sets. When you buy the starter kit, you'll get a number of colours in that pack. I buy these separately. You'll also get a stirring stick there. You see that knife-shaped stick there. You can get one of those with the starter kit, but you can buy them separately as well. From JDiction, they have a website you can buy online, and you can buy it through Amazon as well. There will be links to Amazon and their website with a discount, which is what they've offered to you guys. If I do this video review, I can share that code with you, and you can benefit from the discount if you think you like what you see. I certainly like it. I will be using it again in future. I'm going to try out some other brands as well. I'm going to play around with it, make some comparisons. I'm just going through some moulds here. I've got different moulds and shapes. I've got a tray here, and you saw the little elephant and the cloud, and there's a heart there. I'm going to go with the heart for the first demonstration. Like a low poly effect on the heart there. I know my daughter will enjoy that. So as I'm ready to go, I'm now going to pour the water straight into the mixture, and you'll find that the levels will drop once you start mixing that water in. It will drop right down. So the powder mixes in a very, very fine powder. It mixes in very well, very easily. Get it going, get started. I just use one of these sticks here. I use these plastic sticks because once it dries, it flakes off really easily. So it makes it a good and easy product to clean up with. It's not messy and horrible and sticky like other products like resin, for instance. You have to be more careful. Tend to be more waste. These cups I can reuse because it will dry onto the edge of the cup. Any remnants will dry up, and you can crack it and make it into smaller pieces, and you can reuse it. You can use it as an embellishment in a future product. So I'm just giving it a good mix here, scraping the sides, scraping the bottom. I like these flat sticks because you get right along the side there. I like the silicone ones as well. It's mixing well. You do get some bubbles, but the bubbles dissipate very quickly. They rise to the top and dissipate quickly. And I'll show you once it's in the mould what you can do to try and encourage that as well. I don't know why I did that. I scraped off the material from the stick and then put it back in again. I think I felt I needed to give it another mix just to make sure. You have to check, make sure no lumps. You don't want to get lumps in there, but a good mix. I've seen some people use like a whisk to mix theirs up, and you don't really need to use a whisk. I'm sure it works fine, but a stick is fine as long as you mix it well. So there we have my first batch of 100 grams of powder mixed with the water. I'm now going to add some pigment, and as it's a heart, it's probably going to be more relevant to use, appropriate to use a pink or a red colour. And what you'll notice, and what I notice with these pigments, even though you can see there's quite a bright, bold red colour there, it won't come out as you see in the bottle because you're adding it to a white coloured powder. I'm starting off with, I think 5 drops. I started off with just to see how it goes. I was a bit unsure as to how much to add based on the ratio. Like I said, 2% ratio, 5 drops is fine. I wanted to see how deep that red would go just with 5 drops. So again, I'm giving it a good mix. What you can do as well, what I notice is you can mix it to a certain amount, but not entirely, and it leaves you some sort of like strings, almost marbleized effect in the mixture, which is something I want to try again in future. So mix it just a little bit, leave some of the streaks of paint in there so it marbleizes. So it's a very pink colour, isn't it? It's very pastel-y, so I'm adding some more red just to deepen it a little bit more, but it will only go so far. See, another 3 or 4 drops of red. It didn't go much deeper, so my conclusion was that if I just keep adding red, it's just going to mess up that ratio and it won't cure as well because there'll be too much pigment in there. But I was happy with that. It was a nice deep pink, which is perfect for a heart. See, there's bubbles rising to the top of the cup already. And then we go with the pour. I pour slowly to make sure, because it's a low poly shape on that bottom. It's got little crevices. I want to make sure I didn't get too many air bubbles in there. Pour right to the surface. Give it a little dome as well, so just a little bit over the top of the edge, just to dome it. And I have plenty left over. One thing I'm still learning is how to measure the correct amount in the first place for the mould I have. Something I'm still learning with resin products and things like this. But always keep a spare couple of moulds to the side, ready to jump in with in case you have some left over. What you don't want to do is waste this and leave it up to the side, so it'll harden and then you'd have wasted it. So I'm going to use this little hand symbol here. I'm sure we're all familiar with this. It's a fairly shallow one, so I'm pouring it a bit at a time. Let it flood through first to fill out, and then I'll top it up. And you see I'm squeezing the mould a little bit just to get it moving and to release any air bubbles. Still have some left, so why not do some pink elephants? Now, as I alluded to earlier, if you do have some left over, a small amount in the cup, the cleanup is fairly easy. Here I am just running the remains of the liquid around the edges of the cup to then allow it to dry so I can crack it away once it's dried. Cleaning up the cup, and I can use those embellishments later on in a future project. Give them a few taps on the moulds just to release any air bubbles. And zoomed in, you can see some of the air bubbles rising to the top there. So every now and then going in with a few taps just for the first few minutes after pouring it before it solidifies too much. You could initially go in with a stirring stick, a very fine stirring stick, just to reach into those crevices to release any air bubbles when you first pour it. But I poured it nice and slowly, so there weren't too many. So it's on to project number 2, and that is the tray mould. Now you see this isn't the greatest mould here, it's a bit warped in places, but it's okay for an experiment. Now I've got some UV resin here. I wanted to try something I'd seen before to make like a rain effect. And I wanted to infuse resin with the Resincrete, see how it worked together. And this is using small dabs of UV resin to create fake raindrops on the surface. Now obviously this is the top side of the tray, because obviously you're pouring in upside down. So I'm adding lots and lots of little dots of UV resin, different sizes, and trying to create that kind of like where some of the raindrops have hit the surface and dripped in a little bit and spread a little bit, so they're not all perfectly rounded and uniform. Trying to do it as random as possible. So I'm doing this just as an experiment. It takes a while obviously, so I will skip through a lot of this, but in the meantime I will go over some more of the details of Resincrete, some of the benefits of using Resincrete and some of its qualities. So as I mentioned before, it is BPA-free, it's non-flammable, it's food safe, which is really good. So like things like this tray here, you could use it for, you know, sushi or something, and as long as you sealed it afterwards, you'd need to use some sort of sealant of some kind, like a wax sealant. You can get different sealants for stone top for countertops and anything stone or cement based. You can get good sealants for them. So there's many out there. You can do some research and look into that. As mentioned, it's non-flammable, so it's safe for kids. You could do it with your kids. I think if you're under 13, if the kids are under 13, you want to have some sort of supervision. But anyone over the age of 13 can use this, and quite easily. It's quite safe to use. It's non-toxic, it's odourless, it doesn't smell, it doesn't give you headaches. Even though many of these other things, resins, for instance, when I do resin work, a lot of resins are non-toxic and are very similar now, much better now, low odour or no odour at all. But they can still, even with the low odour ones, they can still cause headaches, or they do for me anyway. And UV resin's the same, it might be low odour, but it can still cause headaches. This Resincrete, you shouldn't get that, it's completely safe. It's very easy to work with as well, it's quite a durable material. It gets very hard. The longer you leave it, the longer you cure it for, the harder it will get. It's demoldable in 30 minutes. So once you finish your product, again, depending on your environment, if you're in a kind of fairly warm room, it should be perfectly ready to demold in 30 minutes. If you're in a colder room, you might want to leave it a bit longer. Sometimes I leave it overnight just to be sure. But what you want to do as well, you want to take it out of the mould when it's ready to be demolded, take it out of the mold because it can sweat. It's releasing moisture. So if you take it out of the mold, it will dry quicker. More moisture will release from the item you've made. Obviously, the deeper it is, the thicker it is, the thinner it is. All these different factors take precedent. I mentioned before the ratio. It's easy. It's a 10:3 ratio. So 10 grams to 3 grams, 100 grams to 30 grams, and so on and so forth. Fairly easy to work out. So once I've finished with the resin raindrops, it's time to stick it under a UV light for about 5 minutes in total. Probably a bit overkill, but I wanted to make sure. And then it's time to pick out a colour. I wanted to add a colour of some kind, so I've used a chameleon colour, a blue that would change colour in the light. Once checking to make sure that the raindrops had solidified properly, use a makeup brush, grab some mica powder, some chameleon mica powder, gently brush that on all over, on the inside of the mould, in the corners, on the edges, just to make sure that the whole outside of the mould was coated, or inside of the mould was coated, so the outside of the tray itself, once taken out, was nicely coloured. Obviously over the raindrops I'd brush it on very gently because I don't want to knock them, move them off, because they'll peel away. It's a handy tip for making these sort of things, little embellishments and raindrops. If you want to do that, to have them separate or put them in something else, you can lay them on some silicone like this, let them cure, especially with UV resin because it's so quick, then peel them away and put them where you want them. Right, so now the mica powder is laid down, it's time to mix up the next batch of JDiction Resincrete, ready to pour into the mould. I wanted to try something here and use some acrylic based paints, because it mentions you can use them, but I had some fabric paints as well. I want to check that out. You can't really, sorry about the focus here, but it's a Pebeo fabric paint here. I've got some left over from a previous project. This is a blue. I wanted to see how that turned out because I thought the pigmentation might be a bit stronger, so I mixed some in just as a test. Mixed a fair bit in and it was quite light, so I thought I'd add a bit more. And much like the pigments that come with, or that you can buy for Resincrete, it didn't darken anymore. So I poured it on and realised soon that I probably hadn't mixed up enough. But again, I'm pouring it nice and slowly just to make sure I'm reducing the chances of air bubbles and allowing the flow of the liquid to go over the edge of the centre and into the little crevices instead of pouring it directly into the crevices. I thought that might help. I'm not sure if it will, but it's worth a try. It does mention as well, if you do use acrylic based paints, pigments, paints, you can add a bit of extra water because the acrylic itself is absorbent, so you need to add a little bit of extra water to thin it out, and maybe that's what I could have done here. I could have thinned out the mixture a little bit more with a bit of extra water, but I didn't do that, and I think that's probably why it's quite thick, thicker than the first batch I made, even though it's the same ratio. I think the fabric paint I added made it a little thicker than normal. I'll give it a few taps and tips and tilts here and there, and it does go nicely into those crevices. It's just not quite high enough. So it's now time to demold. It's been about an hour since I've finished these. Some of them have been curing much longer than that, obviously. I did the heart, the little hand there, and the little pink elephant earrings. I'm just going to demold the heart here. Sometimes you can feel how warm it is as it's curing. This one's cooled down a bit more though, but it comes out really nicely. There's no air bubbles there that are obvious. I've overfilled it a little bit so you can see some edges there over the top, but you can easily scrape them away. I didn't film me tidying these up. Another time I'll perhaps do that, but it's very easy. Just use an X-Acto knife or something just to, or deburring tool, just to scrape away the edges there. But that came out really nicely, nice and smooth, really smooth finish. It's silky smooth finish, especially on the mould side of the piece itself. The hand came out well. I can maybe put a little hole in there and turn that into a key ring. It is fairly thin, so be careful of breakage, especially with the fingers there, so maybe a layer of UV resin to strengthen it. I played around with these. I did put some resin on these little elephant, which I believe are earrings or something, I'm not sure, but I put them on there, maybe key rings. And being a little bit heavy-handed it was, even with the resin, a little layer of UV resin, I managed to snap the trunk. So I will say that if you use thin molds for this Resincrete, you have to be very careful. It's not something that's going to get handled a lot, it can break. It'd be great for an ornament that you put on the side. Yeah, be careful with that sort of thing. The thicker ones shouldn't have a problem. Obviously you can chip them like you can with anything, glass or china, but look after them, don't you? You can see how it's a little bit too shallow. It's created a bit of a lip there. I could have put another layer of Resincrete on top of there to finish that off, but it's just an experiment really. And as you can see, it's come out really nicely. You can see that purple flex it's got on there from when you change the angle of the light from blue to purple. There's a little bit of residue there, a little powder there which wipes off, and you can deburr the edges. The mould wasn't brilliant mould. You can see there's a slight concave in the middle there. It was not a good mould at all. But the effect itself is really cool. The mixture of the resin inlaid on, with the Resincrete above it or below it now, it worked well, and the little droplets of resin did not come out, they stayed in there. So it attached itself quite well. Looks great when it catches the light there. So in conclusion, what are my thoughts on this? I played around with it a bit. I've done this demonstration video for you, so it gives you an idea of my experience. But overall, I enjoy playing with it. It's great. If I fancy doing a quick project, I can just go to it, and especially because I'm impatient, I can grab it, mix it up very quickly. I can add some pigments to it. I can play around with it. I can add embellishments, glitter, and all sorts of things. And I can chuck it into a mould, and within half an hour, 45 minutes, I can demold it and have a look. It's nothing better than that feeling of revealing something when you demold something. I mean, there are demolding videos especially for that, it's quite a satisfying feeling. But I tend to just do things for practicality, for functionality as well, and I think this is great. I mean, I can make all sorts of things. Ideas for around the house, soap dishes, and sort of trinkets and trays and gifts for my family. And eventually, once I played around a bit more and got a bit more confident and established some ideas that I really enjoy, I can add them to an Etsy store and start selling them. I think it's great. It's great fun. It's good price. It's easy to use. Here are some I played around with before. Didn't come out great because the colour didn't pull away from the mould as easily, but there's something I learned from. But I do love lizards. I do like chameleons and geckos and stuff. Here's a little bit of wall art, something you can hang up. This one came out beautifully, a hummingbird, using again the mica powder effect. This one here in a nice green colour instead. So lots and lots of ideas. Now here's what I was talking about earlier, how easy it is to clear up. So now this Resincrete's dried, that I used earlier in the heart, just squeeze the cup and break it all up, scrape it off, make it smaller, crunch it up and store it for later use, and give the cups a rinse out and you can reuse them. So it's good for the environment in many ways. You can by using either these kind of cups or the silicone cups, you can squeeze out the remnants of the Resincrete, reuse it, and you still get to reuse your cups as well. So there's not so much to throw away. With normal resin, you don't really have that. So this is not a replacement for resin. I don't think anything's going to replace that. I mean, there's PU resin that's come out. I haven't tried that yet, but which is faster. But this is not a necessary replacement, but it's a good alternative, I think. This is great for quick projects, things where you don't need to use epoxy. So all in all, I definitely recommend this. It's great fun to work with. I'm going to be using it again in future. I'm going to use it for all sorts of things. I'm going to try new things out. I might make some more videos as well. I like to experiment with different mediums, not just my lasering, not just paint pouring. I want to do some other resin work, but I'll definitely be using this again in future projects. I might try a big project, maybe like a coffee table or something. I might try mixing it with wood. I love using wood. If I can combine wood and Resincrete, I will do that. But I hope this video has given you an idea of the flexibility and the versatility of this product. I definitely recommend it. If I didn't enjoy it, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't recommend it. I pointed out some things you have to be wary of, and I pointed out some of the things that you can enjoy from this. So thanks for watching. Until next time.